All right, we're live. It's the Panther-Lair Post-Game Show here on Saturday afternoon, October 11th, 2025, commemorating the date because I suspect this is one we will think about and remember for quite some time and probably talk about and reference for quite some time because, hot damn, folks, that was a heck of a college football game. And, while we get started here, people are filtering in. I was trying to think of, what's the thing I could say to, start this off? You know what I mean? What's my big, strong opening statement? And, I'll just say right off the bat, I mean, that was a hell of a game. Pitt 34, Florida State 31. A close game, obviously, comes down. It was a 10-point. It was a 3-point game, and then it was a 10-point game. And just for a matter of moments before it became a 3-point game again. So I mean, pretty close throughout. You have a bunch of lead changes. Nobody led by more than a touchdown until Pitt took a 10-point lead for about 15 seconds or something like that. It seemed like that was about 28. About 48 seconds, Pitt had a 10-point lead, and that was the only time it was more than a touchdown in this game. It was a close game. It was back and forth. Both teams made plays. Both teams did dumb stuff, and it was just a heck of a college football game, a really good college football game. And, no matter the outcome, I think I probably would have been saying that. I waited till around the fourth quarter to text my friend. He said, this is a hell of a game. Because you never know if things are going to go sideways. And obviously it could have gone not in Pitt's favor and nobody would want to hear about how it was such a great game, but it really was a heck of a game. And it was the kind of game that you just sort of, sorry, the dogs bothering each other, messing with each other there. It was the kind of game where, I don't know, for me at least, I found myself thinking less about long-term and what does it mean for Pitt this season and what are they going to do later or what's it mean for this week. I wasn't even thinking about Florida State's long-term consequences. I was just caught up in the game of what's going to happen in this game. And it doesn't matter about anything that happened before or anything that's going to happen the last 5 games or the next 6 games. It's just this game right here because it was that sort of captivating of a game, an engaging of a game. It was a really good game. And fortunately for those of us who gather and talk about Pitt for an hour or two after the game, it ended up being a win for the Panthers. And I think there's a lot of places you can start, a lot of things to talk about with this game. We are definitely going to have at least one shot at the game, if not 2. I don't think we've ever had a 3-shot game. I don't think we'll get to that. Maybe we did at the end of the 2023 season, but I don't think we'll have a 3-shot game at any point. But we'll definitely get one today, and I've got an idea of who's going to be the shot of the game. And I think there's some really good options on that, but we'll get to that in a second. Pitt, I tell you, I was trying to think of what do I want to talk about first? Aside from just, wow, that was a great game. Do we want to talk about Mason Heinschel, going 20 of 29 for 320 or 21 of 29 for 321, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions? Do we want to talk about Desmond Reed coming back for putting up 200 yards and 2 touchdowns? Do we want to talk about Ja'Kirian Turner going out and scoring 2 touchdowns and getting 78, 80 yards or something and making some huge plays, arguably the play of the game? We'll talk about that in a second. Do we want to talk about the reliance on, in the passing game of guys who are not wide receivers? Do we want to talk about how Pitt kept battling back in this? And I tell you what, one of the things that stands out to me the most, and maybe this is doing that sports writer thing where we pretend like it's, the biggest story is not actually the biggest story. But one of the things that stands out to me the most is this Pitt defense. They gave up 415 yards to Florida State. They gave up 170 rushing yards. Tommy Castellanos threw for 245 and 3 touchdowns, far more than Tommy Castellanos should ever be throwing for in a game. I mean, he threw 23. When they say on the broadcast that the staff doesn't want him to throw more than 20 passes, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement of your quarterback or your passing game, is it? The coaches told us that ideally they'll have less than 20 pass attempts. I mean, that's not even damning with faint praise. That's just damning, right? So there's a lot of things you look at with this Pitt defense and say, wow, they didn't play well. But you get into that spot late in the third quarter, Pitt's down 24-21, and Florida State just starts running the ball and running it and running it and running it and running it and running it. They ran it, 5, 6 times to end the third quarter. They come out in the fourth quarter. They run it 1, 2, They tried to run it a third time, but they got called back on a holding call, and they're moving the ball and they move into Pitt territory and they just pounding it. And Pitt's getting pushed around. They're letting the D-line get upfield and then getting big yards where the D-line's having to chase them down. And it really feels like you're on the ropes there. It feels like you're everything's catching up. All the injuries, the defensive ends all being out. You had Braylon Lovelace and Rasheem Biles were both hurt in this game. And left the game, and you wonder what was going to happen. They both come back and they play. Cruz Brookins is not Cruz Brookins is out for this game, and they're all banged up, and it's finally catching up to them. Like I think you were probably feeling it too. I know I was at the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter, when Florida State was just marching and just running the ball and picking up 4 yards and 5 yards, and then they bounce one for 12 or 15. It's just okay. It's catching up. They held on, they put up a valiant effort, but they just aren't going to be able to get out of this one. The injuries are catching up to them. They're having to rely too much on, just such a limited rotation at defensive end, which has impacted the rotation at defensive tackle. And they've got all, these guys playing every single snap at linebacker. I think the only rotation at linebacker was when Nick Lappy came in for Rasheem Biles for a drive or two. And they've got all the, it's a, good job, but, they just not going to be able to hold on to it. They really tried. They gave it their all. It was valiant, but it just wasn't, it caught up to them. And that would have been understandable. And I think I applauded their effort. And then Shadarian Harrison punches that ball out, comes up from behind, punches the ball out from the Florida State running back. Jasir Whittington recovers it. And, I don't know if that was a boost for the whole team. I don't know if it was just a boost for the offense. But after that, Pitt gets a field goal after the fumble recovery. Florida State goes 3 and out. They stop, on first down, Thomas Castellanos tries to run on that next drive, and they stop him for a -1. He tries to throw a screen pass, and the receiver drops it, and then Castellanos has to scramble. It just gets contained, only gets 4 yards. The next drive, they get another 3 and out. They pitch 2 3 and outs while Pitt scores a couple of field goals to take the lead, and then ultimately push it to 34-24. The resilience of Pitt's defense, the fight in Pitt's defense, the effort, the heart. Those guys are feeling it because, those Florida State running backs are big. I commented that to somebody on Twitter who mentioned about Kavir Baines-Marquez, who ended up having playing a ton with Cruz Brookins out. He finished with 13 tackles, game high 13 tackles. And he was taking on some dudes that were they looked like they were twice the size of him. And it's just pounding after pounding after pounding after pounding. And they just kept fighting. And even when it looked like they were getting knocked out, and even when it looked like they were wearing down, and even when it looked like it was catching up to them, they come through and make a huge play to turn the momentum back, give the offense a couple opportunities to score, and ultimately, they give up the long touchdown pass at the end that makes it a 3-point game. But Pitt's defense shut it down in the fourth quarter. Just looking at the fourth quarter numbers. Florida State had 100 yards in the fourth quarter. 57 came on one play. The total, they had 13 plays. So 12 plays, they got 43 yards. So, less than 4 yards per play. Pitt's defense just stepping up and stopping them. Even though, it's one of those things where you just dig deep and try to find a way to make those plays. And they did. And so, am I burying the lead because the lead is Mason Heinchel and Desmond Reed and Jakarian Turner? Yeah, a little bit. But I think a special shout out goes to those guys. It won't be the shot of the game, but it'll be a drink of the game to get, to Pitt's defense, to shout out to Pitt's defense for that effort at the end as the Panthers take 34-31 win, and they needed Pitt's defense to step up and close that one out, and they did. Of course, they also needed Pitt's offense to make some big plays, and they certainly did that as well. In the fourth quarter, they get 2 field goals and a touchdown. You score, what's the math on that? 13 points in the fourth quarter to turn a 24-21. They were trailing entering the fourth quarter. So it's a fourth quarter comeback engineered by Mason Heinchel, who goes out, makes a couple mistakes. The interceptions were not good. The first one, you could basically call it an arm punt. I mean, it pins Florida State inside the 20. I think they got the ball at the 18. Not the worst thing. Not the worst thing in the world. The second one, I think he was trying to throw to Kenny Johnson, the interception in the end zone. TV was saying, TV was saying that they thought it was being thrown to Blue Hicks. It would have been really bad if it was thrown to Blue Hicks. I think it was thrown to Kenny Johnson. Kenny Johnson slipped, and it went straight to the defender. It gets picked off. I'll tell you what I liked about that. And we're getting kind of deep in the weeds on this game right off the bat in the first 10 minutes here. But I tell you what I liked, not about those interceptions, okay? But both of those interceptions were thrown on third down. The first one, the deep one, was thrown on 3rd and 5. The next one, the one in the end zone, was thrown on 3rd and 2. And it was just unnecessary to be throwing the ball 20 plus yards on 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 2. And one of the big things I talked about through the week that I really liked out of Mason Heinchel's game was in the first game, in the win over Boston College, was how he was able to just sort of chip away, short passes, quick passes, not even just quick, but just short passes. Just take what's there. Take what the defense is giving you and give your playmakers a chance to make plays. I thought that was one of his most impressive traits in that Boston College game is how he did that. And, that's not what he was doing on those third downs when he threw the interceptions. He was trying to go for something bigger than what was there. And you just don't need to do that. I mean, you've got good playmakers and you got to give them a chance to make plays. And so what impressed me, all right, because he throws those 2 interceptions to end the first half. Well, no, to end the first half, they had the ridiculousness of just not taking a knee and running the clock out. But he basically threw the 2 interceptions to end the first half. He comes out on the Pitt's first drive of the second half, and they're in 3rd and 6. First down, they get 7 yards from Des Reed. He loses 3 on second down. It's 3rd and 6 from the Pitt 19. And all Mason Heinchel does, okay, on 3rd and 6, he drops down or drops back. He's got the look he wants with the coverage against Desmond Reed, and he gets him the ball in a spot where Reed can pick up 6, where Reed can convert the first down. He wasn't trying to throw a 50-yard pass. Now he gets a 50-yard pass out of it because Desmond Reed is just that good. And he's able to make a guy, he's able to take off and run deep downfield. But he was really just, the pass would have gained a first down, which is all you need to do. Cade Bell has said he wants to lead the country in first downs. He wants to lead the nation in first downs. They had 31, I think, against Boston College. They had 23 today. The way you do that, and the idea for Cade Bell, is just chip away. Just chip away. Take what the defense is giving you and move the chains. And that's all that pass was intended to do. But because he's got Desmond Reed, because he's got Ja'Kirian Turner, because he's got Kenny Johnson, because he's got Raphael Williams, hell, last week because he had Justin Holmes, like, these passes can turn into something more. So take what the defense gives you, and you'll at least get what you're trying to get, which is a first down, and maybe you'll get something more. And in that case, that's what happened. Check down over the middle. Desmond Reed turns it into 50 yards. And I mean, that's such a mature, heady play for a freshman quarterback to make on the road in a difficult environment. Just huge. Just a huge play for Desmond Reed, a huge play for Mason Heinchel, and ultimately one of the plays that helped win this game. All right. Let me find it here. Here we go. I'm going to do our shot of the game, our Backshore Apparel shot of the game before we dive into it, because we're going to do the comments and questions. I'm going to let you guys do a lot of the conversating here tonight. But our Backshore Apparel shot of the game. Look, there's a lot of good candidates, okay? There's a lot of good candidates. Desmond Reed comes back. First game back after missing a couple due to injury. He gets 200 yards of offense on 20 touches. Mason Heinchel throws for another 300-yard game, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Really good on third down. And, and I'll talk about the third down in a second, because I thought some of the third down numbers were really interesting. Kenny Johnson comes up with a big 42-yard catch. Raphael Williams had a couple big catches in this game. There weren't a lot of wide receiver targets to go around, but Raphael Williams made some big catches. Kenny Johnson, obviously, with the huge catch. All those guys on defense that I talked about. But I tell you who I'm going to go with for the shot of the game, man, because this might have been the play of the game. And in a game where you had a 50-yard catch, you had a 42-yard catch, you had 4 touchdowns, you had 2 big field goals, you had some big TFLs, you had a huge fumble. I mean, Shadarian Harrison might have made the play of the game with that fumble. But I'll tell you what was the play of the game, the real play of the game. All right. Pitt's up 27-24. 2nd and 7. Mason Heinschel takes off and run. Now, Pitt's trying to protect the ball. They're trying to drain the clock. They're trying to run that 4-minute drill, even though they got the ball with 6 minutes to go. They obviously want to, score a touchdown if they can, but they're trying to take as much time off the clock, protect the ball. Mason Heinschel scrambles on 2nd and 7, runs across midfield, and fumbles. And everybody who was like, Pitt's got this, they're going to win this game, collectively held their breath across Pitt Nation until Jakirian Turner picks it up. And that might have been the play of the game. Jakirian Turner recovering that fumble might have saved the game because, Florida State gets the ball back there near midfield. They've still got probably, 4.5 minutes, somewhere around there. They've got, all 3 timeouts left. They have plenty of time to drive into field goal range to tie the game and potentially score a touchdown to win it, or at least go ahead. So our shot of the game, our Backshore Apparel shot of the game, Boozy, Jakirian Turner coming up with a huge fumble recovery to keep that drive alive, which ultimately resulted in a touchdown, which ultimately gave Pitt a 10-point lead and created a cushion so that when Florida State scored again, Pitt would still be ahead. So there are a lot of candidates for play of the game. Jakirian Turner recovering that fumble, I think that's it. That's why he's the Backshore Apparel shot of the game. Of course, remember, Backshore was born in Pittsburgh. I forgot my chaser. Backshore was born in Pittsburgh, but built on the Tampa coast, designed for days by the water and salt in the air. But it didn't stop there. Today, Backshore hats are built for every season and every forecast, whether you're chasing waves, hitting the trail, putting for birdie, or braving the Pittsburgh cold. Wherever life takes you, Backshore has you covered. Explore the collection at BackshoreApparel.com. Backshore, coastal roots, all weather ready. And remember, Backshore is run by a Pitt guy, okay? If anything, you got to be feeling good about being a Pitt guy right now, right? Or a Pitt lady right now after that win at Florida State. Mike runs Backshore. He's a big Pitt guy, supporter of the podcast, big fan of Panther-Lair.com. So go check it out, BackshoreApparel.com. All right, let's jump into the comments and questions. Of course, super chatters. We're going to give you guys the precedent right here. Kyle Peterson is the super chatter. Make sure you include your comment with your super chat. So Kyle, I see his comment right here. Kyle says, just when you think you're out, they pull you back in. Shame on me for when it got to the 2-minute timeout and Pitt was up by 10 and thinking, they're going to pull this off. They got this taken care of. Because, of course, 2 plays later, Florida State would hit a 57-yard touchdown pass. And look, Mekhi Danzy is super fast. Like they said on TV, he might be the fastest guy in the ACC. That might be the case. I don't know. I don't know if he's been. Well, I guess actually he has been timed. He's a track guy too. He's a stud receiver. Not always the most reliable catching those screen passes. He had a pretty crucial drop there late. I think it was in the 4th quarter, but he got open for that one and made the big catch against Pitt's secondary. I made it close, but Pitt was able to recover the onside kick and hold on to that one. And yeah, but that might not have been what you mean by just when you think they're out, they pull you back in. You probably meant after the Louisville game, you were out, and now Pitt has pulled you back in. Pitt has pulled you back in. Mason Heinschel has pulled you back in. Desmond Reed has pulled you back in. Has Pat Narduzzi? Well, we'll answer that question through the week, right? Ski 8210 says, wow, what a game. Mason is a dude. Reed coming up big. Offensive line got a push and great blocking, playing and winning as a team. Great effort on offense, defense, and special teams. Yeah, another really complete game. And I know, they gave up 4 touchdowns to Florida State. They gave up 400 yards to Florida State, 170 on the ground to Florida State. But I don't feel like the defense played poorly. They did get beat up in the run because they were playing shorthanded. They had 3 linebackers that they used, save for a handful of snaps when Nick Lappy replaced Rasheem Biles. But I mean, I think Pitt's defense battled out there. And it was a kind of game where, all right, you gave up 31 points, you gave up 400 yards, but you kind of played well anyway. Pitt's defense still made a lot of plays. I mean, Florida State was 6 of 12 on third down. That's pretty good. And yet I don't feel like Pitt's defense played poorly. They had 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. And Florida State had better numbers than that, 8 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. I think they played well. I think Pitt's defense, despite some of those numbers, I think when you anecdotally or just like from observation, the eye test, I think they played well and had a good game. It was a good game overall. It was a complete game. Obviously you'd like to be a little bit better against the run, but I mean, that was a real challenge. You knew Florida State was going to be good as far as running the ball. I felt like Pitt would probably be able to have some success on offense. I didn't know how much success. I didn't know what that would translate to. But my bigger concern was Pitt stopping Florida State. And while they didn't do it the whole game, they did enough of it. They gave up 10 points in the second half. You give up 10 points in the second half, you've done pretty well and probably given yourself a chance to win. Your offense comes out and scores 20 in the second half, then you definitely should win. And that's what Pitt got today. Really strong performance, really complete effort. And, Desmond Reed, like sometimes when a guy's out for a couple of weeks, and particularly when you get like pretty solid performances from the guys replacing him, sometimes you kind of think like, not, maybe he's not that good, but like, they can get by without him. Like Desmond Reed showed today why he's like that important to Pitt's offense. He showed today why he is so good and makes such an impact and why his absence was felt. 200 yards on 20 offensive touches, 10 yards every time he touched the ball on average. Right. And even in like the first half, he had it was a 3rd and 13. He gets a little check down pass and he picks up 12 yards on the first drive. Actually, it was on the first drive. It's 3rd and 13, kind of a check down pass, swing pass, whatever you want to call it. He gets up the sideline for 12 yards. And now, instead of a field goal situation, I think they would have see where they were when that play happened. 3rd and 13, they were at the Florida State 37. So, if he only gets 3 or 4 yards there, it's 4th and 9 from the 34, I don't think they're giving Trey Bukowski a 50-something yard field goal. 52-yard field goal or something like that on the road. I don't think they're going to do that. So they're probably going to punt. That's not a great punting position. But because he's so good, he gets 12 yards and it's 4th and 1 and they go for it. Mason Heichel converts it. How about that? This is one of those things that happened like so long ago in the game that you don't forget about it, but it sort of slipped from your mind. 3 4th down attempts and conversions on the first drive. 3. The first one, a 4th and 1 from their own 34. And they get Desmond Reed with an 8-yard pass. I mean, shocker there. The next one, a 4th and 1 from the Florida State 25. Mason Heichel runs for 5 yards. And then a 4th and 1 from the 11. And they go to the Wildcat. Deuce Spann, former Florida State Seminole, goes out there and picks up 1 yard. Here's the other thing I would say about those 4th down conversions and the 3rd downs that preceded them. Because Pitt finished this game on 3rd down. They were 5 of 14. Not great, right? 5 of 14. You're not going to feel too good about that. That's slightly over 30%, somewhere around there. But what they did on that first drive when they had the 3 4th down conversions. So their first 3rd down is a 3rd and 7. Heichel scrambles for 6 yards. Now it's a 4th and 1. And I think now you have a makeable 4th down situation. The next one, the 3rd and 13 that I talked about, Desmond Reed gets 12 yards. It's a makeable 4th down situation. And then the 3rd and 6 from the Florida State 16. Heichel scrambles again, 5 yards. Doesn't convert the 3rd down, but he creates a 4th down that you can convert, that you feel comfortable attempting. And they end up, you have 3 4th down conversions on that drive, but they're all 4th and 1 because the 3rd down gain was enough to make that like a reasonable option. You know what I mean? And so they didn't convert any 3rd downs on that first drive, but they did enough on 3rd down to set up a makeable 4th down. And I think it's not a win, but it's close to it, right? Let's see. More super chatters. Lots of super chatters here today. We appreciate everybody. Bill Florian says, in the words of Bluto Blutarski from Animal House, holy. Now, see, do I say the swear words here, Bill? Come on. I need a beep button or something. Holy beep. Big win, baby. Big win. I'll save the nitpicking for Wednesday. Happy now. Hey, look, there's always going to be nitpicking. There's always going to be questionable stuff. There's always going to be there are always going to be those plays that you're just, what were they doing there? Why did Kenny Johnson call fair catch and catch the ball at the 2? That's not ideal. Why do they have some of these, careless penalties? And I mean, the pass interference calls, they more or less earned them. The first pass interference on Rashad Battle, I mean, Deuce Robinson hooked his arm around him and pulled him into it. He sold it. He sold the penalty, but and then there should have been a pass interference on a pass to Deuce Spann or Kenny Johnson in the end zone. And they don't call it, but it doesn't matter. There's always going to be plenty to nitpick, but I think these last 2 games, the Boston College game and the Florida State game, there's very little to nitpick. They gave up some plays, they gave up some yards in this game, but I think you're going to have that. I think there'll be games where you can't just shut them out until your freshmen and backups are in at the end of the fourth quarter. It's not going to be like that Boston College game every time. You're going to give up some yards. They're going to give up some yards to Syracuse. Syracuse is going to score some touchdowns. It's bound to happen. It's all about, can you score more points than them? And for 2 weeks now, maybe because they have Mason Heinchel, maybe other factors as well, they've scored more points. Michael B. is the super chatter, says, playoffs? Okay, so Pitt probably will not be in the college football playoffs, but now there is a solid chance we can get to a very nice bowl game. Am I wrong in thinking that, Chris? And Mason H is unbelievable. Look, we talked. When did we talk? Probably on the live show, probably, on Wednesday night or the morning. That once they got past this against NC State and at Stanford, and far be it for me to assume any victory, right? I mean, we know that you can't assume anything, but Syracuse, NC State, Stanford are 3 games that, I mean, quite frankly, it's I'm looking right now. NC State's tied with Notre Dame at 7-7 in the second quarter, and so that's yeah. But I think when you look at, I'm just trying to bring up the ACC standings here. So Syracuse right now 3-3 overall, 1-2 in the conference. NC State 4-2 overall. 1-2 in the conference, and then Stanford 2-4 overall, 1-2 in the conference. So those are games that, if you are as good as you looked against Florida State, if you are as good as you looked against Boston College, those are games you should win. And if you do that, if you take care of those wins, now you're 7-2 going into the Notre Dame game. And again, we're not taking any games for granted. We're not going to assume anything like that. We're not going to look too far down the we're not going to look too far down the road and overlook anything, but the path is there for Pitt to go on a little run here. Mason Heinchel, I think, is only going to keep getting better. I think he got better in this game from the start of the game to the end of the game. And as long as that keeps happening, if they can get a little bit healthier on defense, if they can get Desmond Reed and keep him out there, and I think he was out there, he went out with an injury, but I think he finished the game, right? Find my notes here. Yeah, he was on the field for the final possession. Right, yeah, because he was running the ball. If you can keep Desmond Reed on the field, if you can get a little healthier on defense, and Heinchel keeps progressing, and don't lose anybody else on the offensive line, all the sort of standard caveats and what have you, they should be able to go on a little run. And a run to the playoffs, probably not. A run where they end up having what I think we would all consider a pretty successful season. Yeah. I mean, I think that's very much a viable outcome. Look, after the West Virginia game and the Louisville game, people were saying they might, Pitt would be lucky to go 6-6, or Pitt would be lucky to go 4-8 or something like that. Well, they got 4 wins now, and I think they'll win at least 2 more out of their final 6 games, and potentially more than that. But everything they've shown us in the last 2 weeks is that they're capable of winning at least these next 3 games. And then that puts you in a position where Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami can really give you a chance to who knows what. Why set a ceiling on it at this point? We're having fun here after a 34-31 win at Florida State. Another Wombat is the super chatter, says we are so back. You got it. Let's see. Christian R. super chatter says another great game. Mason looks like a savvy vet with freshman mistakes mixed in. Arrow pointing up, but man, the freshman, important impact plays. Yeah, he did. And you know what? There was one. Oh man, which play did he? Where was it? So this was great. So second drive of the game, Pitt's second drive, he misses Ja'Kirian Turner going up the right sideline, overthrows him, throws it too high. And it's a shame because he was open. It would have been potentially a huge play. He misses that. The next play, it's 3rd and 11 from the Pitt 41. And he drops back. Florida State only rushes 3. And I saw that they were only rushed 3. I said, uh-oh, look out. They're dropping into coverage. This is going to be a tough situation for a true freshman quarterback. But he steps up. Not only does he find Raphael Williams over the middle, but he throws this like sidearm thing. Did you see this? It's this like sidearm thing that Raphael Williams catches and immediately goes down because he should. Because I think he knew he was going to get hit. And so rather than have the ball dislodged, he just kind of like caught it and dropped. But he gets 15 yards out of it. And it was just this sweet gunslinging sidearm Brett Favre type of thing that, Mason Heinchel showed, I think he did it a couple of times in the game. He's crafty. He knows the offense. He's getting better and better at reading the defense and seeing where guys are going to be and where guys are going to be open and finding those open receivers. And he's getting the ball again. Something I said at the beginning. He's getting the ball to guys and giving them a chance to make plays. He did it with Justin Holmes in the game last week when Holmes catches a little flare pass out to the side and turns it into a 14-yard touchdown. He did it with Desmond Reed on a 3rd and 6 in the third quarter. It turns into a 50-yard gain. The pass to Kenny Johnson was not a 42-yard pass. It was like an 11-yard pass or a 12-yard pass. And Kenny Johnson makes the play because Mason Heinchel gave him an opportunity to. The pass to Kenny Johnson gained a first down. If Johnson had caught the ball and dropped to the ground, it would have been a first down. But Johnson makes the play because Heinchel just gave him an opportunity. You don't have to throw 42 air yards to get 42 yards on a pass. You just got to get the ball to the guys who can make plays. And that's what he has done so much in these first 2 games is he's just giving guys a chance. He completed passes to 6 different players today, or actually targeted 6 different players. He completed passes to 5 guys. It's a little bit short of the 11 that he completed passes to last week. But, it was weird. There wasn't a lot of passing to receivers in this game. Raphael Williams had 6 targets. That was the most for receivers. And then Kenny Johnson had 3, and that was it. So out of Mason Heichel's 29 passes, Johnson might have been the target on, maybe they counted him as the target on the interception. On TV, they were talking about Blue Hicks being the target, but I think it might have been Kenny Johnson. Either way, 9 passes out of 29 going to receivers. It's not a ton, but when you have 9 targets for Desmond Reed and you have 5 more for Ja'Kirian Turner, that's going to eat up a lot of the plays, and those guys were certainly able to make something happen with it. All right, let's get in here more super chatters because there's a lot of you guys. Let's see, got to scroll through chat screen here. And Rummy is a super chatter, but I don't know what your comment is, friend. So make sure, if you're a super chatter, make sure you put your, here's a comment here. Forgot to add the message in. Is this the best trio of Pitt true freshmen ever? Who's the trio? Mason Heinchel, Jakirian Turner, and Trey Bukowski? Is that who we're talking about? I mean, sure. I guess. I mean, like, in terms of how guys are playing right now, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I have to think about it for a little bit, but they've been really good. Alan McMurray has another comment. We have some serious true freshman talent to be excited about. Mason Heinchel, Jakirian Turner, Sean Lee Jr., and Trey Bukowski. Yeah, Sean Lee Jr. played a lot today. What did he end up with? He had 2 tackles, 0.5 tackle for loss, officially credited with a pass breakup, officially credited with Pitt's only pass breakup, which I think it was a huge one, right? That was late in the game. Oh, here it is. Yeah, it was 3rd and 8. After Pitt went up 27-24, there's a 3rd and 8 pass from Castellanos to Danzy. And, I couldn't really tell if Sean Lee broke it up. I wrote down PBU, but looks like they officially gave him credit for a pass breakup on that play. Other defensive statistical standouts, Nick James and Jimmy Scott were each credited with sacks. Kyle Lewis got 1.5 tackles for loss, as did Nick James. Let's see who else. Jimmy Scott had 1 tackle for loss, that sack. Sean Lee and Rasheem Biles were credited with 0.5 tackles for loss. Shadarian Harrison, obviously, with the forced fumble, the one that Jasir Winnington recovered, which was a huge play. Kavir Baines-Marquez, 13 total tackles, game high. Kyle Lewis had 11, Braylon Lovelace had 10, and Rasheem Biles had 8. So, I mean, pretty much the guys you would expect to be leading the way did just that. And then, you get sort of a smattering of tackles throughout the rest of the group. But, I mean, impressive defensive performances there. Coming back to Alan's comment as far as the true freshman talent, like Jakirian Turner clearly has the coaching staff's trust. I think you saw, unless Juelz Goff got hurt, I think you saw his snaps kind of go down as the game went on. I still think Goff is really good, but Turner's a playmaker, and he didn't look like a freshman out there today. The presence of mind to get that fumble after Mason Heinchel dropped it or got it knocked out, that's a huge play by a true freshman. But he makes plays. He's really good. His touchdown run was really impressive. His second one was almost like too easy. Like Florida State looked like they were like letting him score on purpose or something on that last touchdown drive. But maybe that's just a credit to Pitt's offensive line and the blocking they did, because they did a heck of a job. Let's see. Scrolling through. Angry Marsupial says Mason Heinchel passed the test. Having Desmond Reed is a huge help. It is. Like, maybe what we saw there with Pitt's offense is, Pitt's best quarterback playing with Pitt's best offensive weapon on the field, and you saw the impact. You saw the result. The result was a really strong game, a really impressive overall performance. Pitt finished almost 500 yards of offense, 476. They had 321 passing, 155 rushing. Again, they were only 5 of 14 on 3rd down, but they converted 3 4th downs. Averaged about 7 yards per play. Time of possession, they won that 32 minutes. They had 2 turnovers, both were interceptions. But just a good performance, just a good overall performance from Pitt's offense in this game. And another one, like 2 in a row after, with Mason Heinchel in there. Let's see. WG Runyon, 132 is a super chatter. I appreciate it. You have a comment, but I don't know what you're talking about. It says, didn't like the FEFer. I don't know what you mean. Hopefully we'll clarify that, or we won't. Let's see. See some more super chats in here. Just a Mush says, underrated key to the game is they really clean up the penalties on offense. I don't remember false start or holding call today. Yeah, I know they didn't have a false start. Actually, I was about to look through my notes, but I'm pretty sure there's. Let's look. Pitt had a holding. There's a holding call on Jake Overman. the nonsense at the end of the first half actually is no, that must have been earlier. They're saying it was, right at the beginning of the second quarter. Let me look it up real quick. No, it was at the end of the second quarter, right? Right before halftime. Yeah. Yeah, the holding on Jake Overman when they should have just taken a knee and they decided to hand it off. And then they had the personal foul on Lyndon Cooper, but those were the only offensive penalties. Otherwise, and intentional grounding on Mason Heinchel, but he pretty much was down anyway. Defensively, they had, pass interference and an offside call. That's it. Yeah, no false starts, none of those procedure penalties or anything like that. They had the, kickoff out of bounds, which happened twice, right? Which is a mistake. You need to avoid that. But yeah, pretty clean play overall. Damian Williams says, I loved how they used that one Desmond Reed first down pass play to set up the shovel pass later. Yeah, the shovel pass was pretty great. That's something we have not seen. I don't even know if we saw a shovel pass last year. Did we? Did we see Pitt run a shovel pass in 2024? Let's see if I can find where that was. Oh, it was Pitt's second touchdown drive. And it was funny. It was 3rd and 2. And, they ran, it was an option look. And I'm watching the play. I'm watching it on the broadcast like you are. Unless you were at the game. And I'm watching it, and they snap, and, Desmond Reed's running to his right, and Mason Heinchel's running to his right, and I'm watching this develop. But I'm also noticing that Jake Overman is, like, behind the offensive line and, like, looking at Mason Heinchel. Not looking for someone to block, but watching Mason Heinchel. And, it's like, any of those things where it's not like it slows down, but like in your head, you're like processing all this quickly. And I'm watching it. I'm like, why is Overman looking at Mason Heinchel like that? That's kind of weird. And by that point, they threw the shovel pass and it picked up 12 yards. One play later, they get the touchdown pass to Desmond Reed. That was a very clean pass to Desmond Reed for the touchdown. The second pass to Desmond Reed for a touchdown, not quite so clean, but pretty outstanding play. And you know what? That was like karma paying back for the big for Castellanos' touchdown pass where it was just heaving up a prayer and his guy ended up catching it. But that shovel pass was a slick little play. And now it's something else defenses have to account for. And maybe the next time they run that look with that option, defenses are going to be accounting for the tight end. And maybe that keeps one more guy a little bit closer to the middle of the line of scrimmage, in the middle of the offensive line, trying to cut off that gap on the shovel pass. And you pitch it out to Reed or Jakarian Turner, and maybe they've got a better opportunity because there's one fewer defender to beat. Royce Beacom says, don't know much about offensive line play, but it seems to be a real plus the last 2 games, even with the loss of the starters. Unlike last year, what to do about the defensive ends? So I thought Pitt's offensive line played well. They gave up a bunch of sacks. What did I say they finished with? 5 or something? Yeah, they were officially credited with 5 sacks. One of those was probably when Mason Heinchel ran out of bounds a yard behind a yard behind the line of scrimmage. They gave up a bunch of sacks, but I thought they gave him a clean pocket most of the game. I thought they kept him upright. Didn't really, he got pressured. He ran, he scrambled, but that's part of his game, and that's what he does well, really. Obviously opened up some decent running lanes. I thought the offensive line played well overall. And again, like you said, Royce, that's down 2 starters, with Jeff Percy out, getting replaced by Kendall Stanley, and then Ryan Coretta, kind of the long-term replacement for Keith Cuvée. So it's an impressive performance. I think those guys did well. I think they acquitted themselves nicely. We'll see what the Pro Football Focus grades look like, but strong performance against a talented, highly rated defensive line, and basically all of Florida State's roster. They have a bunch of those 4-star guys and stuff, and I thought Pitt did well against them. What to do about the defensive ends? I don't know. I mean, they just have to keep trying to keep their heads above water until they can get some of these guys back, until they can get Blaine Spires back, and they can get Zach Crothers back. Maybe Jaden Moore will play at some point this season. Panther-Lair doesn't like to talk about injuries, but he's got a lot at defensive end right now. And I think, you have a game like this where you win and your defense kind of like takes care of business as much as they can be expected to, despite being razor thin in terms of depth. I think, it's you give a lot of credit to those guys. You sort of backs against the wall, nobody to back them up, and you're all short. It's all about heart, and you can feel really good about it. You can feel even better about it, I think, because those guys went into battle having to play pretty much the whole game. The linebackers played the whole game. The secondary, not a lot of rotation there. Javon McIntyre, game time decision, he end up playing. Tamon Lynham, game time decision, ends up playing. Cruz Brookins, game time decision, did not play. Reed obviously did play. These guys who are hurt, and they're out there and fighting, and Pitt's probably pretty banged up right now. I wouldn't want to have a flight right now. I wouldn't want to be on an airplane for a couple hours if I was them. I'd probably want to stretch out, get a nice bath, and try to get a little recovery. Will Z says, huge win. Now becomes paramount to win the games you should win. Do that and see what happens in the final 3 games with house money. Yeah, you have to take care of business against Syracuse, NC State, and Stanford. You got to win those games. You cannot have a letdown. I don't think anyone would be surprised if there was an emotional letdown after this game, after everything they poured into this game and how hard they had to work to come out of this thing with a win and how much it means and how excited they are. I mean, they've got to turn around and make sure they have that same energy when they go to Syracuse next week. Like, they cannot have a letdown when they get up there. They can't overlook that game. They've got to bring that same energy, and it's hard to manufacture it week after week after week, but you've got to do it because you've turned the season around. I don't think that's a hyperbole. Maybe that'll be one of our themes this week, is that they've turned the season around after sitting there 2-2, looking at some potential worst case scenarios where people are coaching and playing for their jobs. They've turned the season around, and they've got a chance to really make something out of this season. But to do that, they're going to have to bring the energy and the focus that they had today to every game going forward, whether it's at Syracuse or it's, NC State at home, at Stanford, or Notre Dame at home, Georgia Tech, Miami, whatever it might be. You've got to have that same enthusiasm, that energy. Davey GNYC says Mason Heichel has moxie, toughness, and fight. Did the 2 losses help Pat Narduzzi make this move? Great scheme, and Desmond Reed helped. H2P, light it up. Yeah, I think the 2 losses were the reason they made this move. I wonder, and some other people have suggested it, if they managed to squeak out a win against Louisville, if they managed to pull that one off and not lose that game, but they've still made the change at quarterback. And I don't know. Probably not. It would take a certain something to bench a quarterback after a win, So maybe they needed to lose those games in order to get Mason Heichel. I guess ideally you'd have him out there to start the season, but that's not how it worked out. Maybe they needed those 2 losses to get the quarterback change made. And now that it has, I think it's re-energized the offense and maybe the whole team. I mean, they should go into every game feeling like they can win. And I think in no small part because they've got a quarterback who can give them a chance to win. And I think they probably felt that last year. I would say in the first 7 games, they probably felt like they had a quarterback who gave them a chance to win every time they stepped on the field. That wasn't the case this year. I think as the season went on, particularly those 2 losses, the West Virginia and Louisville games, I think there was some faith was lost, some belief was lost. But you've got this young freshman quarterback out there who has now, what I say he had today, 321. So he's throwing for 640 some yards and 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in his first 2 career starts. Completing 70+% of his passes, and just generally making plays and doing really good stuff. That gives everybody belief that they can win in any given game. And I think that does send some energy through the team. I really do. And so if they needed those 2 losses to make the change, I mean, that's a shame because you would have liked to have made the change just to play the best player. But if they needed those 2 losses to make the change, then so be it. They're in the right place now, it seems. All right. Let's see. We got through all the super chatters, I think. Let's scroll through and see what else we're talking about here. JPlan72 says, is this better than the Miami win with Kenny Pickett? Well, this is on the road. So there's that. This team still has something to play for. You know, that was the season finale of a 5-7 season. This team, you know, this is game number 6. So there's still something to play for. So I think there's something big there. This was that Miami game in 2017 was a pretty gutsy, gritty win that I think was a rallying point for a lot of people. You know, I think it was a rallying point for the team. I think it created a lot of good energy going forward into the offseason. Was Miami in 2017 better than Florida State in 2025? Probably. You know, I like Florida State. I mean, they've got some playmakers. There's no question. They have some talented players on both sides of the ball, but they're a flawed team. I mean, they're a flawed team. They're a flawed offense. They can run the ball pretty well, but their passing game, I mean, what was it today? It was screens and deep passes. And like, I'll go back, you know, when we have a chance to sort of settle in, and we'll look at the stats on Pro Football Focus, and I'll go through my notes and everything like that. But it really felt like anything they got, and even anything they attempted in the passing game, was either a screen or a deep throw. You know, and the deep throws were a prayer, and they came down with a couple of them. So I mean, it's worth the risk, and they certainly made plays in the screen game. But there's something like remarkably unthreatening about Florida State's offense that you just don't think they're going to be able to run it all game long or get enough points out of their running game to, actually be able to, win the game that way. And their passing game just, I don't know. I mean, like we've talked about it a million times. How was Thomas Castellanos the guy that they decided they should go to? It didn't make any sense. It still doesn't make any sense. I still think they could have done better. And I say that as somebody who likes Castellanos, who thinks he's a good player. But I think you saw how limited he could be. I mean, it just wasn't there. Let's see. John Christofich says Pitt is back. Davey GNYC wants to know, is this the second coming of Kenny? He's a different kind of player than Kenny Pickett. And as someone, I think either on Twitter or somewhere said, it took Kenny Pickett like 5 years to get to this level. And I think he had moments of greatness in those first 4 or 5 years. But Kenny did not hit the ground running the way Mason Heinchel has. Priya says, enjoy. Hope they don't overlook Syracuse. Syracuse beat Clemson. Yep, I know. And they can't. They can't overlook Syracuse. There's no question about it. You have to, again, you have to bring the same energy into the Carrier Dome that you took into Doak Campbell Stadium today. And I know it's not the Carrier Dome anymore, but it's still the Carrier Dome. Just scrolling through, we'll get as many of these comments as we can. Chris says, great win by the Panthers. Joshua Brown says, kid looks better than Kenny Pickett did until his 5th year. Beach Dante says, Mason Heinchel is the balls of this tee. I think you mean team, right? Pitt Fan H2P says, give us that ACC championship. Tina Neal says, let's go. Yeah, absolutely. Grant Sakuda says, any hotel recommendations for downtown Charlotte? Asking for a friend. I went in 2018 when they played at the in the ACC championship game. I forgot where I stayed. I might have, for the 2018 ACC championship game, I think I flew into Greensboro and stayed in Greensboro for one night. Flew in Friday, stayed in Greensboro for that night, and then just after the game, because it was like I knew it was a late game and everything, I just after the game around 1 or 2, whenever I got out of the stadium, drove back to the Greensboro airport and just hung out there until my flight left. I think I took an early flight home on Sunday. So no, I don't have any hotel recommendations. I think I probably stayed somewhere in Greensboro. So you probably would like a more enjoyable hanging out experience than what I had when I stayed in Greensboro for one night and then spent the next day in the Greensboro airport, or the next night in the Greensboro airport. But that was how I chose to approach it. Try and save a little money wherever you can. Christian Kosmak says Mason is the real deal. Keep him healthy and develop him from here, and the next few years look very promising. I think in college sports in 2025, you can't talk too much about the next few years. You just got to go with what's happening right now, and right now, Pitt's in good shape. John Jingleheimer Schmidt says if we can just take care of business the next 3 games, we're a 7-2 team. Unreal what this season has become. Sometimes it just takes one player, man. Adam Vinchik says, what a great game. Kids played really hard, even undermanned. Also, Pat Narduzzi out-coaching Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn. Did he out-coach him? Maybe. I mean, actually, you know what? Those guys were going to run a fake punt from the – where were they? They were going to run a fake punt from, their own 29 with like 6.5 minutes left to go in the game. So, yeah, by virtue of that decision alone, and like, thank God they got it. I mean, for them, thank God they got a delay of game penalty, because then they didn't have to actually attempt to execute that fake punt, which would have not worked and given Pitt the ball at like the Florida State 20. So just on that alone, Pat Narduzzi won the coaching battle. Christian L says, Mason Heinchel scrambling puts me in cardiac arrest. Lats 66 says, I'm so proud of this effing team. Sports Clip 17 says, huge win. First post-game show I get to watch live. I'm usually on my way home from the game when you're live, but anything can happen for the rest of the season now. Well, usually we do the post-game shows like late after a home game. We usually go later, right? Like we usually start 7 or 8 o'clock at night, somewhere around there. So I don't know, maybe you have a long drive back, but either way, I'm glad you could tune in Sports Clips. It's always fun to have a lot of people here and have these conversations. Josh Newark says Mason Heinchel has that dog in him. Allegheny Anthony says, I thought it was going sideways at the end of the first half. Then with the second half kickoff penalty, glad to be wrong. Yeah. I think that's a great point, Anthony, right? Because you get to the end of the first half. Okay. You've got interceptions on Pitt's last 2 possessions of the half. Then you get the complete like cluster that is Pitt's final possession of the half, where you could have just taken a knee with 6 seconds left to go and ended the half and gone to the locker room. And instead they run 3 plays, 6 seconds left on the clock, and they ran 3 plays. Nobody called a timeout. 3 penalties on 3 plays, including one that carries over to the second half and forces Pitt to kick off from 15 yards back. So wherever they kicked off from, like the 20 or something like that. Florida State starts that drive at the 43, but Pitt's defense shows up, and on 3rd and 9, they get a sack and force a punt, force Florida State into a 3-and-out. That might have been their first 3-and-out of the game. So, or no, they had a 3-and-out earlier. Never mind. Yeah, momentum was slipping away. Pitt's offense, what did they do on their first drive of the game? Or the first drive of the second half, they score a touchdown. So momentum was slipping away. You get the back-to-back interceptions. You have all that nonsense at the end of the first half. You give Florida State good field position to start the third quarter, and you still are able to rebound. Like, how many times have we seen momentum slip away, particularly at like a half change or a quarter change, or not a quarter change, but like the half. The end of the half, you finish on a bad note, you have this happen or that happen, you give up a kickoff return for a touchdown right at the end of the first half. And momentum just sort of seems to slip away, and you can never really get it back. Well, in this case, they did get it back. They came right back out at the start of the third quarter, forced a 3-and-out, and then went down and scored a touchdown. Very unpit. Dude, you're being very unpit right now. Bradford says the DBs were a bit of a concern today. Is it fair to give them some benefit of the doubt with them playing a run-heavy offense? So I need to let me see if Pro Football Focus has any numbers up on this game. They don't have any numbers up. Here's what I think. All right, so Pitt got beat on a couple long touchdown passes. And each time those guys made those catches, I just thought to myself, you know what? Sometimes dudes make plays. Like sometimes the other team just makes a play. And then or not most, but a whole bunch of Florida State's other receiving yards came on screen passes. Like we'll go through and I'll go through my notes because I wrote them all down. Just screen all night long. He screen, you know? And that's all it was, with occasional deep shots that they connected on a couple of. And so it's like and those screen passes aren't necessarily on the defensive backs. Those screen passes are, well blocked and guys don't make plays. And I mean, Pitt's geared up to stop the run. So they run a screen pass. There's only one or two defenders out there. There's two or three guys blocking, and they're able to create the space and get big yardage out of it. So I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't feel like Pitt's corners have been tested all that much. I mean, we're 6 games into the season now. And the first 2 games, Duquesne, Central Michigan, that was nothing. West Virginia, it was just a run-heavy team. They didn't really throw all that much. Louisville tested them a little bit. Chris Bell had a decent game, but even that wasn't the test that I expected it to be. Boston College was just bad. And then this game, they made a few plays. I don't know if Pitt's corners are playing great or playing very well, or they just haven't been tested all that much. It's weird. I mean, we're halfway through the season now, and I'm still not really sure. I think Shadarian Harrison and Rashad Battle and Tamon Lynam and Sean Lee are pretty good players. But I don't really know that we know. I don't think we've seen them tested all that much so far this season, just due to a weird confluence of events of who they played and how they've done. So, or who they played and how those teams have chosen to try to attack Pitt's defense. So I don't know if I would say the DBs are a concern. I mean, I think they're better with Cruz Brookins out there, but Kavir Baines-Marquez put in the work today. That guy, he deserves 2 ibuprofen and an ice bath, because he's probably going to be pretty sore, because he was taking on a lot of guys who are a lot bigger than him. JP Marvelous says, shout out to the offensive line who's taken a lot of heat for basically the last year and a half. Yeah, those guys did a nice job. Awesome Possum says, very lucky bounce on that fumble. Kid needs to keep both hands on that ball, but Mason is him. Yeah, he absolutely does. I mean, Mason Eichel can't give up that fumble, can't lose that fumble, but sometimes the ball bounces your way, right? And I mean, how many times have we seen the ball not bounce Pitt's way? Today, in one very crucial situation, the ball bounced their way. Adam Vitchik says, keep Shadarian Harrison and Sean Lee on the field. They're way better than the upperclassmen. I'll be interested to see what the snaps end up looking like. But yeah, I kind of agree. Ralph Williams says this system is perfect for Mason. He definitely looks perfect for the system. I'll say that. Jeff Shimonsky says, good win. The West Virginia game was very disappointing. Look, we're going to go all season talking about, inevitably, whatever Pitt does, and particularly if they continue to have success, we will go all season talking about, boy, if they hadn't let the West Virginia game slip away. Boy, if they hadn't let the Louisville game slip away. It happened. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't think West Virginia and Louisville are very good, and I don't think we're going to see anything this season that really changes that. It happened. All you can do is try to get better. Deep Shade Utah says very few penalties. Yep. Good job for Pitt on the penalty side. Dropping Nuts says Desmond Reed was almost becoming an afterthought amongst Pitt fans, but his availability was the key to winning the game. When are some of these defensive ends getting back? You said it better than I did when I was trying to make that point that he became an afterthought. You got Jakarian Turner making plays. Joels Goff looks really solid. You got some good backs on this team, and I was trying to find a good way to say that a little bit ago, but you're absolutely right. He was becoming something of an afterthought until he went out today and showed exactly just how dynamic he is and how good he can be and the impact he can have on the game. I mean, because he was huge. You can make a not short list of players who were crucial to this game and crucial to Pitt getting this win. And, obviously, Mason Heinchel's on that list. Jakirian Turner's on that list. Desmond Reed is no further down than like second or third. He was essential to getting this win. Some super chatters. Will Z says, I want a Trey Bukowski shot of the game. Hey, shout out to Trey Bukowski, man. He missed that field goal at West Virginia. He's made everyone since then. See how many that is. Count here. Wait, actually, you got a Trey Bukowski shot of the game last game. So what are you talking about? He's made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row, including 2 today. Huge kicks for Pitt. Huge kicks to get this win and keep it going. John McDonald's a super chatter, sir. I don't know what your chat was. Let me see if I can find something here. Make sure you add your comment into the into your super chat so I can find it. I'll try and look for it, John. Dwayne K says Chris must be feeling it. Screen. That was my, weak rounders, reference there, but it was ton of screens. I mean, that's all they did was just screens. Let's scroll up here, see what else we can find. Jeremy Tunney says, what a win. Mason has not only saved the season possibly, but also probably saved Pat Narduzzi from getting fired. I don't know what was going to happen at the end of the season. I don't know where they were going to go over the course of, the final 8 games. I don't know what the record was going to be. I don't know what the outcomes were going to be. And I don't know what was going to happen at the end of the year. I think it's a results business, right? And you've got to produce, you've got to win games. And they weren't winning games. There was a point where they lost 2 games in a row and lost them in pretty ugly fashion after losing 6 in a row in pretty ugly fashion last year. So, yeah, was there a hot seat? I don't know. Was it a little bit toasty? Probably. Is it still? I mean, you're never far away from, starting the toaster, right? But it probably cooled off a little bit. Super chatter here. John McDonald. Seriously, Chris, how milquetoast is Mike Norvell? He can't even motivate his fans to stay for the entire game. Pitt, let's go Pitt. And happy birthday to super fan Peter Berlin. Peter, happy birthday. I don't know you, but I hope today actually is your birthday and John's not just doing a joke. Happy birthday, sir. And the fans leaving. I mean, dude, they went like 2-10 last year. They beat Alabama and they have not beat a Power 4 team since then. How many ACC games have they lost in a row? 8 or 9 or something like that. They haven't won a conference game in 385 days. It's going to be like over 390 by the time they get to next weekend. The fans are done. I thought this was remarkable. I wrote this down because they were saying it at the beginning of the game on the TV broadcast. And you always get a unique perspective when you watch the games on TV. I would much prefer to be at the game. I could see everything. I can see what I want to see. If there's a time where I want to watch the secondary, I can watch the secondary. If I want to see what's happening on the sideline, I can see that. If I want to see the subs or whatever it is, I can see that at the game. So I much prefer to be at the game. But watching on TV is a unique perspective. It's a unique sort of experience. And as the broadcast was starting, one of the things the announcer said, and I wrote it down, quote, one of the most important games of the Mike Norvell era. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, God, Pitt's 3-2. Like not anything against Pitt, but like, this is one of the most important games of the Mike Norvell era. How low have you sunk from like going undefeated 2 years ago and being the national cause celebre? Is that how you pronounce that? The cause celebre national for getting snubbed from the college football playoffs to you go from that to hosting a Saturday noon game against a 3-2 Pitt team. And it's, quote, one of the most important games of the Mike Norvell era. They also use the phrase a program at a crossroads. Like Florida State fans are done with this. And like beating Pitt was not going to get them back on board, but to at least keep them from jumping off the ship more. Because I read the Florida State message boards a decent amount over the last week, just to kind of see where fans were at and what they were talking about and what they were thinking about the team. But like they're not into it. They're not into it anymore. They're not liking the Mike Norvell era anymore. But John McDonald, thank you for being a super chatter, and happy birthday, Peter Berlin. All right, let's see. We got it. Every time I click onto these super chats, I lose my place as I was scrolling through the regular chats, but I think I found it again. Garrett Sherwin says this freshman class is looking really good. Really very excited to see them develop and hopefully stay together. It's always part of it. We'll see what happens there. RJC Man 38 says Desmond Reed just needs to catch the ball. He's really good at that. Reed had 8 catches on 9 targets today for 155 yards and 2 touchdowns. I would say he is a good receiving threat. This is why I predicted him to have 2,000 all-purpose yards, because I thought he would put up like 200 yards a game or something like that. But here he is, first game back, and he's got 200 yards. PG Jeans says eating W's tonight. Okay. RJC Man 38 thinks Ja'Kirian Turner should be the feature back. I think you can make – I think with Ja'Kirian Turner, Desmond Reed, and Joel's Goff, you can get a pretty effective offensive attack out of the backfield. I don't want to say a pretty effective running game, because I'm not sure if Cade Bell is going to call the running game in such a way to be effective, to be an effective running game. But I think you can get production out of the backfield, either rushing or receiving, with those 3 guys and be a real threat. Byron Nelson says the second half, the defense played excellent except the pass at the end. Stat-wise, let's do a quick comparison here. Second half, Florida State had 189 yards in the second half. 57 came on that 1 touchdown pass. So, you're looking at 30 plays for 130-some yards. So, right around 4 yards per play in the second half. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Florida State was 2 of 6 on third down in the second half. Pretty good stuff. Pretty strong performance from Pitt's defense for sure. Luciana Bear says the O-line did a very good job giving their all. So proud of our guys. Belief, attitude, and determination equals celebration. Great recoup by Mason. So many great plays by these guys. Yeah, there was a lot going on for sure. Rashad Patterson says, let's go Shadarian Harrison with a key forced fumble. That was a huge play. If there was if Ja'Kirian Turner had to play the game by recovering a fumble, Shadarian Harrison and Jasir Whittington teaming up on the fumble, on their fumble, was right up there as one of the plays of the game, excuse me. Mark Shilaju says Pitt has a 3-headed monster at running back with Goff, Reed, and Turner, can all make plays. Strength of the team is at running back. Yeah, that's funny. I just said something like that, and you came through. PG Jean says the O-line was great. Michael Balsaric says great win. Swim Boyd, props to our kicking guys. Yeah, you know what? Caleb Junko did well. Let me see what his final stats were, but they're not going to tell the full story. 2 punts for 79 yards. He had a 42 and a 37. One of them placed inside the 20. I think that was the 37. Caleb Junko, I think, has been solid all year long. I think he's been solid. And I think he had another good game today. Not props to Sam Carpenter. He had the kick that went out of bounds. And that was, I think, the same drive that had the pass interference penalty. I think that was Florida State's first drive, right? Yeah, it was Florida State's first drive. So they ended up only having to go 65 yards. They got a 15-yard pass interference penalty. So it's considerably easier drive, although they had their own penalty that pushed them back a little bit and made things a little bit more difficult. But other than Sam Carpenter kicking the ball out of bounds twice, pretty solid day from the special teams units, I would say. RJC Man is predicting that Mike Norvell gets fired tonight. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Thomas Richards says Mason Heinchel is a total gamer. Don't disagree. Byron Nelson says big play by Ja'Kirian Turner recovering the quarterback's fumble. Yeah, that was our shout out or our shot of the game. RJC Man at 10 after 4, 10 minutes into the show said, let the people speak. I should stop talking. See, but the problem is, like, I'm just here by myself, so I have to keep talking. I'll read your comments eventually, but I'm going to give a little preamble, a little bit of something to open the show. Pickle Chips says, shout out to Sean Lee. Absolutely massive play towards the end. Yeah, I thought so too. I wrote it down as a PBU. I think they gave it to him as a PBU. Mark Shilju says, if they can keep them, the Pitt freshmen could make the next few years really fun. Yeah, they can. But again, in 2025, it's hard to think too far ahead on these kinds of things. Let's see. Thomas Richards says, I heard they're having a freshman redshirt burning party for both Jakarian Turner and Mason Heinchel when they get back to the Berg tonight. They both officially at 5 games. Let me see. Mason Heichel's only played 2 games. Today was his 3rd. So he's actually still within the window to take a red shirt. Jakarian Turner, this was his 5th game. So his red shirt is officially gone, but Mason Heinchel could still take one. Not gonna, but Michael Balsaric says, thought the play calling was good and love the aggressiveness. I wonder about the 4th and 1 from the 34 on the first drive of the game. Like, if that's not a F it, dude, we're here to win this game moment, I don't know what is. Because, like, just going for it. 4th and 1 from the 34. I mean, that's... And it was a heck of a play call. Desmond Reed was on. It was like almost like a wing, kind of almost lined up as like a tight end. He, Mason Heinchel rolls out to his right, and Reed gets open, against the linebacker, gets 8 yards on 4th and 1, but just going for it right off the bat, like knowing walking into the game, like we can't like soft. There's a term I want to use, but I can't say it. We can't tiptoe around this game. Like, we have to go out. We have to take the fight to Florida State. We have to establish ourselves. We have to establish dominance. Now, I mean, like if that play blows up and they give Florida State the ball at the Pitt 33 or something like that, we're all going to be saying it was stupid. But there's something to be said for the chutzpah of going out and just saying, like, screw it, man. We're here to win, and we're going to do whatever we can right off the bat. 4 plays into the game, we're going for it on 4th down. Like, that's some video game stuff. Like, that's what I do on the college football video game. I go for it on 4th and 1 from my own, 34. Pat Narduzzi was playing the game tonight or today. Steele Broderick says the tight end shovel pass was a beautiful 4th down call. Clemson 2016 vibe. It's funny that you say that because there's a Pitt football media group text. Oh man, I'm giving up the inside secrets here. And one member of the Pitt football media sent a text after that play, said, wait, I missed it when Matt Canada was hired as an offensive assistant or something, like offensive analyst. It was a great call because it's not something Pitt has done. They haven't run that play. And you've already got Desmond Reed, like, all eyes are on him at all times. And so a pitch play to him, an option play, which they've run a handful of times in the last couple of weeks. They've run these little option plays. Although they ran an option on that first drive, and it was to the short side of the field. The one that bounced off of Joel's Goff's back. Not a good idea to run the option to the short side of the field. Never been a big fan of that one. But they've run the option a few times. Everybody's watching Desmond Reed, and just, here comes little Jake Overman just scooting right up the field like he's a modern day Scott Orndorff. Thomas Richards says the 3 successful 4th down plays in the initial Pitt drive told me that the Panthers came to Tallahassee to win today. Yeah, for sure. Josh Newark says what's the most likely outcome? Pitt makes the playoffs this year or Mason Heinchel wins the Heisman next year? That's a funny question. I don't know. Pitt makes the playoffs this year or Mason Heinchel? I mean, most likely outcome? Like, if I had to pick between those two, I'd probably say the playoffs. Like, I'd probably say they get on a run and win the ACC or something, which I don't think right now that's going to happen. But I also don't really think that Mason Heinchel is going to win the playoffs next year. So that's an interesting question, though, Josh. It's an interesting question. Jason V says, does anyone else think that Kenny Johnson needs to be replaced on punt return? He makes so many boneheaded plays like the fair catch of the one today. I don't know if he makes that many. I mean, like, he had a mistake. Was that the Louisville game? And then obviously the fair catch at the 2 was a bad decision today. I mean, ideally you'd have Desmond Reed at a certain level of health that you could let him do that job because he's really good at it. But I mean, Kenny Johnson is a dangerous punt returner. He's good at that job. He can catch the ball. Like, number one, he can catch the ball. That's the number one goal of the punt returner, is to not fumble the ball. And he has not had a problem with that. He does need to improve his decision making. He needs to get away from the ball when it's not going to be something that's worth trying to catch. And then also, you put your feet at the 10-yard line, and if you have to take a step backward, you don't. You take steps forward and you get out of the way so the ball doesn't touch you or touch anyone else and rolls into the end zone for a touchback. He needs to work on that for sure. Let's see. WG Runyon 3132 says, I did not care for the audio review. On the further review, the refs know they're being listened to and seem to be politically correct. I don't know. Like, yeah, they seemed. So this was obviously the first Pitt game I've watched on TV in a while, since the West Virginia game. And the first time I've seen that where they kind of listened in on the review. I thought it was good. I liked it. And even if that's not how they would normally talk, like, I liked hearing them say, okay, I don't see any angle that would give us a reason to overturn this play. Do you? No? Okay, good. All right, thank you. Like, I liked hearing it. I thought it was good. I enjoyed that. So, but everybody's got their own thing. Let's see. Steele Broderick says, if Pitt wins out, are they in the ACC championship game, or if wins over 3 ranked teams and finishing with 2 losses, are you in the college football playoff? I mean, if they win out, they'll make the ACC championship game. I mean, I think I would say that. I mean, looking through it right now, Virginia's undefeated, Duke is undefeated, Georgia Tech is undefeated, SMU and Miami are undefeated. So Georgia Tech, Pitt could take care of that themselves. And if they win out, that would mean beating Georgia Tech and Miami. So they take care of both of those teams. If Virginia and Duke play each other, which they do, one of those teams will have a loss. SMU is also currently undefeated. They don't play Virginia, but they don't play Duke. So I don't know. You get into like tiebreakers and stuff like that. I would assume that if Pitt were to win out and they would go 10-2 and 7-1 in the ACC, they would probably be in the ACC championship game. But we're obviously getting really far ahead of ourselves. Take care of business against Syracuse, NC State, and Stanford, and we'll talk. Bradford says the play of the game was easily Mason Heinchel's sidearm pass to Desmond Reed for a touchdown in the second quarter. Like, that was a ridiculous touchdown. Actually, no, that was a great play. That was just an outstanding read. It was an outstanding pass. It was a great run up the sideline. Great catch by Desmond Reed. His ridiculous touchdown pass to Desmond Reed was slightly more ridiculous, but that came a little bit later in the game. Mark Shilaju says, how many times is the Grim Reaper going to knock on Pat Narduzzi's door only for him to turn away? Just 2 weeks ago, we were ready to fire him. Like him or not, the man seems to respond to adversity. I think, like, look, whatever we want to say about the West Virginia or Louisville games, okay? What did I I used the Entourage reference. Remember the Entourage reference? I think it was after the Louisville game of Medellin. In that show, and they screened Medellin, and they were like, there is a good movie in here. It's just, this is very poor production or editing or whatever, but there is a good movie buried deep inside there somewhere. And I said that's what this Pitt football team is. There's a good team in there. They've just got to figure out how to get it out. And apparently what they needed, the catalyst, was a new quarterback. The catalyst was the true freshman quarterback who ended up being really, really good. And so, like, I don't think the team has changed all that drastically, other than they got a new quarterback who has obviously given them new life on offense. And by extension, has like carried over to, I think, energize the team to some extent. So, Panarduzzi, did he respond to adversity? I think he changed the quarterback, and that has changed the fortunes of this team. And Trupical says we're going from firing Panarduzzi to building a statue in 3 weeks. I don't think anybody's building a statue. Nobody's building a statue just yet. Jason V says the big plays from multiple freshmen provide a glimmer of hope for the future. Mason Heichel, Jakarian Turner, Jasir Whittington, and Sean Lee all had a significant contribution. Whittington's a redshirt freshman, but I follow what you're saying, and he definitely had a huge fumble recovery for sure. Bradford says Florida State has a great rushing offense. They kept calling our defensive line undersized on TV. Then again, they said a lot of questionable stuff. I mean, Pitt's defensive line is undersized. I mean, particularly compared to Florida State's offensive line and Florida State's running backs, they are undersized. I don't think there's any question about it. But they kept battling away. Mark Shilaju says the announcers kept making excuses for the Florida State injuries, but never mentioned how many defensive linemen were out for Pitt. Yeah, both teams were getting banged up. Both teams were taking some injuries. Deuce Robinson, the wide receiver for Florida State, going out was a huge loss. But it was both teams suffered some injuries. Comment from a while ago, Righty says, Chris, we're here to watch you drink shots. Stop the BS and grab that damn bottle. You said this at 4:28. Had I not done the shot yet at 4:28? Jeez, I thought I got to the shot quicker this time. I guess I didn't. Let's see. All right, let's scroll through here. We're see what anybody else is saying, because we got a solid 90 minutes in here. I mean, it was a good win for Pitt. Overall, it was a good win for Pitt. Florida State, I'm not sure what their season is going to become. I'm not sure how good they are. I have questions about that offense. But to go down there to win with a true freshman quarterback making his first career road start with a defense that was as decimated by injuries as Pitt's is and has been, missing their best safety, missing almost their entire defensive end too deep, outside of one guy. And then, losing guys in the game, guys getting banged up, leaving the game, coming back in the game, just sort of battling. I mean, this is a gritty, I don't want to say inspiring win, but I mean, they earned it. They earned this win, and it was a good win. I mean, winning at Florida State, that's impressive stuff. And now you're 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the ACC. You got a winnable stretch coming up here. You got an opportunity to really do some stuff, particularly with the way Mason Heichel's been running this offense. So impressive game, good overall, and Pitt wins 34-31. Listen, thanks to everybody who tuned in tonight on the live stream. It's a lot of fun to hang out with you guys. We probably could talk for like another hour or two, but I got to get to some of our post-game stuff at Panther-Lair.com. Listen, we'll have coverage throughout the weekend and, of course, all week next week at Panther-Lair.com, and we'll have lots of video talk right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. Pitt wins 34-31. We'll see where they go from here. But wherever they go, we'll be writing about it and talking about it on Panther-Lair.com and right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for tuning in today. Hope you've had a great Saturday. I'm guessing it went pretty well for you. Enjoy the rest of the night. Enjoy the weekend. And we will catch up with you Monday morning for the Morning Pit right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com.